Our president speaking earlier, flanked by all the leaders of the BRICS nations. If you missed it, some really interesting comments from the Brazilian leader, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, saying that the war in Ukraine is a failure of the UN Security Council. And of course, he has not been non-aligned. He spoke about the failure of the international borders and sovereignty against that war, and then followed virtually by the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, saying that the war was as a result of the West starting a conflict in the Donbas region. So some simmering tensions perhaps between these leaders, but putting on a face saying that the BRICS can cooperate on various issues, including education, skills development, that will uplift all these economies. For more, we're joined by SABC News reporter Natasha Phiri. Good afternoon to you, Natasha. So, yes, they are all side by side, and what's happening right now?
Definitely, Francis. Good afternoon to you. And of course, to our SABC viewers, we continue to bring you rolling coverage of the second day of the BRICS Summit here in Sandton, Johannesburg. And I'm actually joined by a very interesting figure who's been quite busy for the past 2 days, the Minister of Electricity, Mr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. Thank you so much for joining us at SABC News. You had a busy morning. You were signing bilateral agreements with the Chinese government, as we saw yesterday.
No, thanks, Natasha, and good day to the viewers back at home. Yeah, so it's a follow-up to yesterday's overall framework agreement that we signed with the Chinese that has to do with clean energy solutions going into the future, and also a letter of exchange with regards to the equipment that will be provided to us to make interventions in relation to emergency power, especially to support the major public facilities such as hospital, clinics and police stations. So we're taking it to another level now. It's just a technical assistance on the generation side. You know, we've taken a decision to delay the decommissioning of the coal-fired power stations, but that has got implications. The implications are that we are likely going to continue to with the emissions from those power stations. There's existing technology tested and tried in China. They've done it over a period of time. So we want to have conversations on how we can deploy it, retrofit it to some of the power stations. On the transmission side, you know that the ESCOM balance sheet is constrained. The sovereign matrix is deteriorated. So we need to tap into other sources of liquidity, and China has made available a facility that we think provides favorable terms, of course, subject to discussions and, of course, national treasury engagement, and also on the distribution side. As I speak to you, there are many communities who don't have electricity, not because of load shedding, but the transformers have burst, the substations can't carry the load. So it's important that we look at technology solutions to help us to avert that, including the financing of that expansion. So this is part of the totality of the engagement. So we're taking the conversation from a general framework to actual interventions so that they can have a meaningful impact on the lived experiences of ordinary South Africans, but also business. We want to make sure that business continues to operate, small businesses in the township, medium-scale businesses, provide some degree of relief on big business, and make sure that we don't disrupt people's lives by denying them access to electricity. So these agreements will have that effect.
How soon can we expect this equipment to actually touch South African shores?
Oh, it's already in transit. So when I was in China, we concluded that yesterday really was for the principals to say it's happening, but we have concluded the agreement. On the Sunday briefing, I'll be able to give you an indication, but the shipment is already on its way, 450 of these units. So on average, we think we'll be able to do about 350 to about 400 of public hospitals, clinics and police station correctional services, because some of them will use a combination of these technologies. Yes, we are going to get 552 units, and people will see a big difference, especially those far-flung areas in the rural hinterland of South Africa.
You're not only a minister, but you're also an ANC NEC member. I'm sorry, I need to also just put you on the spot. On Saturday, we spoke to President Ramaphosa in his capacity as ANC president. He had committed that come 2024, load shedding will be a thing of the past. Is this something that you could put your head on the block for?
The president has spoken, so that's my mandate. His his voice, his intentions and goals, we are committed to that. And I'm more than confident, not just buoyant, but bullish about our prospects. We're going to give you a feedback with regards to Tutuka. We think we can get significant amount of megawatts. We're expecting Unit 5 at Kusile to come on stream by October. 3 units in Kusile again come on stream, the last of the 3 by December. Just on Kusile, about 3,000 megawatts. Just on Tutuka, about 4,500 megawatts. So you're already the other side of 4,500 megawatts. We are very confident about the prospects of resolving this existential problem.
One of the main priorities here at this BRICS Summit is developing partnerships towards energy transition. How does this translate to in a South African context?
Well, it's important. I mean, one of the biggest constraints that we are having is grid capacity, and we did share with you that we require the magnitude of investments of upwards of 210 billion rands. We need to expand the transmission line by about 14,000 kilometers in the next 10 years. To put that into context, in the past 10 years, we only did 4,500 kilometers. And that's why the conversation with the state grid, China, is important. They are the biggest utility in the whole world. So they've done it before. China also had major problems with regards to energy supply. Now they've got self-sufficient and in fact excess energy that they are able to export to neighboring countries. So it's important that you learn from those experience, speed, agility, and your ability to embrace new technologies, assimilate them in the resolution of this. So I'm more than confident that we should be in a position to bring on board renewables, because the biggest constraint is transmission. We know we've got about 66 gigawatts of private sector sponsored projects at various stages of the project life cycle, but those won't come to fruition. Will not see the megawatts, will not see the electrons or the molecules for as long as we have not built the grid. And that's why it's important that parallel interventions, where we address the generation side, we are addressing the transmission side, and now we're addressing the distribution side. Tomorrow I'll be in Ditobotla. Communities, they have not had electricity for the past five weeks or so, or close to 2 months. It's not because of load shedding. The transformer is exploded. So we'll intervene, make sure that they are able to get the electricity, but also agree that those who can pay must pay. Those who are on the indigent register, they'll continue to get their share of free electricity. But it's important that we introduce that discipline. We have an appreciation of what is the amount of the load, so that the assets we install there, the transformers, are able to accommodate the load, and you don't have these explosions. But also deploy intelligent solutions to alert us when there's overload. The load is more than what the asset can accommodate, and then it trips on its own. So those are the kind of things that we have engaged with the Chinese. They are sitting with that technology. And that's the point I'm making. So it's just beyond signing ceremonies, boardroom discussions. This will translate into the number of hours that the lights are on. I think that's the best measure. I always say that my work is the most difficult, most easiest to measure. How many or off. On the basis of that, you can see these fellows are making progress or they are not making progress. But gradually we are getting there, and I'm confident about our ability to resolve load shedding.
You actually answered my next question, but thank you so much for your time, Minister. Of course, that was the Minister of Electricity. We heard him, Francis, saying and committing also to what ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa had said to us on Saturday, that come 2024, load shedding will be a thing of the past. Of course,